Hey guys, Katie here from Equestrian Movement. How are you going? Popping in for another Training Thursday live, and I just wanted to say hi and welcome to our new members. So excited to have you here. Feel free to introduce yourself, say hi, post pictures of your ponies. We love seeing pictures of ponies. Tell us their names, let us know what you do with them, and why you've joined the Stronger Bond community and what you're looking forward to achieve in the workshop. So just have a little announcement. Our Stronger Bond workshop was scheduled to start next Monday, but we've had to postpone it until the 12th of October. What month are we in? I think it must be October. Had to postpone it till the following Monday. So sorry about that, but make sure that you are joined on the email list, and they'll go directly into your inbox, or join us live when they go live. So I wanted to just introduce us to our new members and talk a little bit about who we are, because I know what it's like when you're scrolling through Facebook and you're in groups and you're looking at comments and you're wondering, who are these people again and why did I start following them? And I also know that some groups, it's it's a bit frowned upon for you to talk about certain things and whatnot. So I just wanted to give you a hi, and this is us, and this is what we do, and we would love to hear from you. So here at Equestrian Movement, we have myself, Katie, and we also have Sarah as the two co-founders of Equestrian Movement. I am the head coach here, and the trainings that you get from email or on the blogs, that kind of thing, on the socials, they are generally written by me and are directly related to experiences that I have had or am having, or things I'm working through with students and their horses. So they're basically my experiences as a trainer shared. Sarah is one of my students who also became utterly obsessed with the way we do things, and so she brings her own spin to a lot of the topics. Being a vet nurse, she has done a few trainings on worming and cycling mares, and she's really embraced the trainability method and its implementation as well, and is really good with the application of that and gives great advice on that as well. We also have our team of trainability members and our Green to Self Carriage members who go through our core set and our monthly lesson plans and whatnot. You'll see them posting and sharing their experiences and their wisdom and the things that they've learnt through. I think we've done 8 workshops now, maybe. We've done quite a few. So they've been through the workshops quite a few times and get little gems each time, and then they get coaching calls with me and that kind of thing. So you'll see them in the group as well giving advice. And they will generally have a pretty good idea on the kind of methods that we share in the group as here. Basically, I would say that all of our members are probably pretty crazy passionate horse riders that are really keen on managing and maintaining a healthy emotional relationship with their horses first and foremost. That's the most rewarding part, and then anything else is a bonus. Obviously, maintaining that and challenging our horses can be challenging and a bit of a struggle at times, but navigating that process so that we don't break those emotional connections that we're trying to build with our horses is what we focus on at Equestrian Movement, as well as that kind of principle comes from wanting to ride a horse that wants to be ridden, So making movement is medicine, and making movement fun, and making learning fun, and the emotional conditioning that goes along the way that our horses need to cope and show resilience through the stresses that we put on them when we are training them and putting them in more challenging environments and situations. So over the years, there have been a few things that have really shaped who I am as a trainer and an instructor. One of the first things was my horse as a teenager, King. He is the one that's in my profile picture. He's now passed away, but he was a pretty special horse. If anybody has had their heart horse, King was my heart horse. And he was just a nutbag. We always brought the entertainment anytime we went to a competition. He had experienced severe emotional trauma before I got him and been physically abused, not that we knew. Mum bought him for me maybe 12 or 13 years old as my show horse to be competing at states and whatnot on, and he'd just been basically taken out of the rodeo ring and retrained for 3 months, and then sold to a young teenager as her show prospect. So clearly making good choices there. But honestly, he was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. He was impossible to catch, impossible to bridle. He definitely had severe trauma to the head, the poll and the ears, the mouth. He's impossible to float. My farrier refused to do anything with him unless I was there. Couldn't tie him up. I have a very vivid memory of one day him dragging my granddad down the alleyway because granddad was stubborn and refused to let him go. He was just general mischief, but because he had this severe underlying physical abuse and emotional trauma, that meant that he could just flip the switch really quickly, and he really struggled to put any trust in humans at all. So he, I think, was the first real experience that I had with developing a relationship with my horse. I think in those days we were doing Pat Pirelli, but I was also working with an old bushy horseman who was helping me try and manage those kind of behaviours. So we did a little bit of groundwork, but by that time I'd already had a pony that bucked me off every time I rode it, and so I'd learnt how to sit a buck, and my mentality was if you had to lunge your horse to ride it, you didn't know how to ride. So King didn't get any groundwork done with him. He basically just got ridden, and we just did our best with what we had and managed his other little personality traits. And one of the really special moments that I had with him, and it's just about, showing up for your horse daily, being with them, and, going through the processes. I wouldn't say that the training that I did with him was beneficial to him whatsoever, but it was what I knew and it was what I did. And, after a year of holding on to my little Bronco, he stopped bucking, and then after maybe 2 or 3 years, he actually started following me around everywhere. And it wasn't because I'd done join up, and it wasn't because I'd done, any of the natural horsemanship tricks that are around. It was purely because he trusted me and I trusted him, and we had forged a relationship through enduring each other, basically. And one of my first memories of this was I couldn't tie him up anywhere, because as soon as he was tied up, he'd rear up and he'd snap the baling twine and he'd run away. So he started following me to the tack room, and I would dismount for the day and have all of my gear packed up, and I'd throw the lead rope over his head, and he'd walk with me to the tack room, put his gear away, and then follow me down to the paddock and put him away. And I thought that was pretty special at the time. I was like, oh, my pony, he loves me, he wants to be with me. So he was really my first experience with developing a relationship and a connection with a horse, and him and I got into a lot of mischief. We have kangaroos here in Australia, and I thought it was fun to go and round them up. We had a local BMX track that I would gallop him up and down the tracks. I definitely was doing things that would just like make me feel sick as an instructor now to know that my students were doing. But him and I, we were a team. And he came down to where I live now in Brisbane, and that was probably the next really big shaping factor in becoming an instructor for me, was my mentor and boss that I started working under here, who, you know, really drilled into me that we should be damn grateful that these big, magnificent beasts who could kill us in a heartbeat welcome us onto their backs. And it really shifted my perspective from that, you know, traditional background that I had of riding 5 days a week, drilling, competing, no groundwork, all of those kinds of things. It really shifted my perspective to, oh, well, you know, why are we doing this? How can we help our horses? How can we make this something that our horses enjoy as well, and not just something that we're doing to our horses? So that was, you know, who shaped me as a instructor and a trainer. I had lots of really big experiences there. I broke my first horse in. I've taught people from, you know, 5 to 65, 75, from very first riding their whole life to, you know, advanced and experienced riders. And we also played with lots of different ponies at the time, so lots of different breeds, lots of different experiences, and lots of different temperaments. And I always seem to attract the horses that have experienced some degree of emotional trauma and physical trauma, because I'd had that experience with King, and I understood how to read their body language so that I didn't make them feel threatened and intimidated, and could get them to trust and connect with me before I started asking them to do anything. So King was a really beautiful experience, and then working with my boss after that really solidified those foundations in, you know, who I was as a horse riding instructor and trainer, and the types of horses that I work well with. I definitely work well with the horses that have experienced the emotional traumas and the physical traumas. So fast forward, and I decided to put my big girl pants on and go out on my own, and of course I'm attracting all of the same horses and students that wanted to help their horses but didn't know where to start. And a lot of the things that I really felt I was coming across was these horses showing these big extreme behaviours that are considered dangerous, but for me were normal because they were the horses that I played with. And the reason why they were showing these big extreme behaviours is because they were trying to communicate something, and that something is getting missed. And so that behaviour had to get louder and louder and louder and louder until it became dangerous. Hi Sarah, how are you? Until it became dangerous and unmanageable. And then that's when, you know, my students would need someone out to help them. And so I would go out and I would, you know, assess the horse and figure out what's going on. And pretty much as soon as I was trying to figure out what was going on, all of those extreme behaviours would de-escalate. And it was just the fact that the horse was unable to communicate that it had a problem, it was feeling unheard, it was not being listened to, that those behaviours had to get to that point. Of course, you can still have those experiences where you accidentally reinforce the behaviours that you don't want by releasing pressure inappropriately and whatnot, but mostly you'd be seeing teeth problems, back problems, pain, educational problems, not knowing how to deal with the stress and the pressure of learning, not understanding how to learn in the first place. You know, a lot of horses aren't taught the process of seeking the release of pressure, let alone, you know, reward for doing the right things, for showing the right behaviours. And so they don't know how to show you the behaviours and find the behaviours that you're looking for, because there's no pathway of consequence that they know how to follow. And so this is kind of where we start to see problems and how we can unravel them, by showing horses how to learn and teaching them that learning is fun. And then in the process, helping them manage their emotions and process stress appropriately. But then as trainers and riders, making sure that we're not over-facing our horses and over-challenging our horses before they have those coping mechanisms and know what to do with that stress in the first place. So that's basically been my experiences as, you know, a solo instructor, and that's where Sarah and I started working together, and she came down the rabbit hole with me, and now we have Equestrian Movement where we can share this knowledge with you guys worldwide, which is so much fun. It's so exciting. So one of the things that I do a lot of is watch other trainers, so not only in the horse industry but other animal trainers and kids and babies, and I'm also a naturopath. So we have like a bit of a melding where I like to see what everybody is doing, because I think I have really bad FOMO and get really worried that I'm missing out on something that's really important in training. And so I like to watch what lots of other trainers are doing across other animals within humans and as naturopaths as well, and implement that and see how it fits into our core philosophy. I've been in the industry for a very long time, so I've definitely played with a lot of different trainers' methods, until I kind of came across my own thing that kind of worked with me, because it worked with my personality and it worked with my belief system. And so things that I try have to fit into that philosophy and that belief system for me to keep it. But then also I'll kind of stash it at the back of my head and say, well, maybe it might work if the right horse and the right situation and everything falls into place. So one of the things I do a lot of is read advice that's given in different groups and watch training videos and whatnot. And one of the things that I think that a lot of trainers lack, I don't think that a lot of riders have worked with horses that are mentally, physically or emotionally broken, that have experienced these traumas and they need a human to help them through. I think that these are the horses that are commonly gone and thrown in the too hard basket and given up on and said that they're too dangerous. So a lot of the times when I'm seeing advice given, I'm like, well, there's no way that that would work if I was working with one of the horses that I work with that have experienced trauma and that don't have secure and safe relationships and that are fearful of people. There's just no way that would work. The other thing that I think when I'm reading what these other trainers are advising on is I don't think a lot of them have ever worked with beginner riders, because the concepts and the words that they're using are just too difficult for like me. I'm like reading through it trying to piece together what they're trying to explain, let alone somebody who's kind of like just starting out or maybe 5 to 10 years in but doing it as a hobby on the weekends, like how they're supposed to piece these big concepts together to get their horse working with them and working soundly for them. And so I think that and I do know that of a lot of trainers local to me as well. So it's not just like in Facebook groups and whatnot. It's like, you know, what experience have these trainers had? I think that not enough trainers have worked with green riders and beginner riders to understand how to start them off in the first place. So by the time you get an educated rider, there's potentially all of these gaps that they've missed in the beginning that get them safe and secure and balanced in the saddle. And if you start off at a school, they're going to rush you through, unless you start off at my school, they're going to rush you through that foundational section where you do establish good balance, because they need to get you into the groups to make money. So, quite often riders do lack these really important foundational things with their posture and their balance in the saddle. I think that there is huge gaps when we're talking about getting a horse from a green horse to an educated horse. And by an educated horse, I mean a horse that understands its aids, it's balanced under saddle, and it looks after its human. They are three really big important things that I work towards when I'm working with horses. I think that a lot of trainers and instructors hop on horses and expect them to be, what they learnt to ride on, which is educated horses. And so I think in that process, there's a lot of horses. I have not ridden a horse that I have felt is 100% sound and is 100% understanding its aids under saddle. So there are definitely significant gaps in a lot of horses' understanding and the way that they travel for soundness. And so that's basically what equestrian movement is like, I've done beginners, I've done new riders, I've done green horses, I've made green horses safe and horses that have experienced trauma safe to look after green riders. You don't, and new riders and intermediate riders. You don't put the beginner rider and the intermediate rider on the abused horse before it understands how to connect with humans and feel safe. But you can take that horse that has had the trauma or that lacks the understanding and lacks the aids and lacks the training, and you can make them safe and look after their riders, even if they don't have that emotional connection with the horse. That's what I did a lot of within the riding school. So when we then talk about what our goals at Equestrian Movement are, it is creating safe horses that can clearly communicate their needs and trust in their humans that they will do the right thing by them. And so to create those horses, and these horses look after their riders. So to create these horses, we have our foundational philosophies that I match all of my choices against to make sure that what I'm doing is in alignment for what I believe and what I'm trying to achieve. And so we start with our first do no harm philosophy, which means make sure the horse isn't in pain, the saddle fits, the bridle fits, the bits fits, and the feet are done, the girth is good, the saddle pad is good, everything is nice, they're groomed well, they don't have any sores. Yes, back in the day when I was learning to ride, we didn't have saddle fits and we didn't have body workers and we didn't have dentists, but my horse tried to buck me off every time I rode it, so it didn't want me on its back. So if we want a horse that wants us on their back, first make sure that we're not making them worse and we're causing them harm. Second to that, build out the environments and the interactions that make your horse feel safe. So when we're working with our horses, we want them to approach us and ask us for a connection and tell us that they're ready to engage. We want them to have that routine in that safe environment, that they don't feel like they're threatened and that they're going to be hurt or endangered. And as soon as we create the routine and the safe environment and the consistency, a lot of those behaviors dissipate, because once our horses feel securely attached and safe within their environment, then any of their defensive mechanisms for self-protection start to come down. Clear and consistent boundaries that you follow through on, key, absolute priority. And boundaries don't mean that you need to, whip your horse into submission or even bully your horse into submission. It just means that you say, this is appropriate, this isn't. There is a bit of a caveat there where your horse actually needs to want to work with you in the first place. So we have to build that relationship in first before we can kind of establish those boundaries really well. But it is important that you have those boundaries with how your horse works with you so that you are safe, because that's, my key is that I want to create safe relationships and make sure that you are safe in your interactions with your horse. And also following through. A lot of the people that I work with have struggled with following through on their ask because they try and it doesn't work. And yes, our horses are going to challenge us. It's instinctive to them to make sure that if we're the ones that are telling them what to do, then we better be good leaders. And so if we ask them to do something and they say no, we also have our sideline topic of consent and yeses and whatnot. But in a horse that is challenging us, if they say no and we don't kind of follow through on that ask, then we're not a good leader. So it's making sure that if you are asking something, that you're not going to be creating pain for your horse when you're asking it of them, that they can do it, they understand what you're asking. So there's lots of things that are really important there, that your ask is achievable. There's lots of things that are really important there when we do set clear boundaries and follow through on them, because that really affects the follow through. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, if you don't know how you're supposed to be asking, if you're not confident in the aid that you're applying, if you're challenging yourself and challenging your horse, we can really fudge those boundaries by not following through on what we've asked. And if your horse gives you a no, it's really important that you understand where that no is coming from. Is it coming from a no because they don't understand what yes is, or they don't know how to find yes, or yes causes them pain? So there's lots of reasons why they can say no, but making sure that we can have those boundaries and follow through on them. If you have any questions, just ask us. Sarah, the challenging no is like a 2-year-old toddler that just learned the word 100%. Lots of horses that we work with have never had the opportunity to say no. So when we first kind of open up this pathway of communication where we allow our horses to express their needs to us and they learn that they can say no, they start to say no to everything. And so what that means is, though, long term, we're building in willingness because our horse chooses to work with us, rather than submission because we're forcing our horse to work with us. So short term, it's a little bit annoying and frustrating and causes us a little bit of grief. But long term, we actually have a horse that's wanting to be with us and not that we're forcing them to be with us. So we talk a lot about emotional motivation and communication. So having a two-way communication with the horse where they are able to consent what we're asking of them. They can say yes, they can say no, we can give them choices. They can help us understand why they have no, so if they're experiencing pain and those kinds of things, like how we can work with them to get them to troubleshoot with us. And so a horse that can't control its emotions can't control its behaviour. So if we're trying to control a horse who's emotionally out of control, there's nothing that we can really do to them that's going to, force a 400 to 800 kilo horse to do as it's told. So how we work with our horses to create this willingness and create this positive experience and create, this emotional engagement in their work is really important to how we have a horse that actually wants us on their back and wants to be ridden. And so lastly is developing those secure attachments and relationships and bonds with our horses and them with us, so that we then have horses that choose to look after us when we ride them, which is our goal. I think it's my goal. It's what I want when I ride, is a horse that wants to be ridden and that wants to look after me. Because once you've experienced it, and then you ride a horse that doesn't want you on it, and that doesn't want to do as it's told, and it doesn't want to work with you, and it doesn't want you on its back, you just don't really enjoy the ride at all. So that's what we're about here. So let me know if you are like, heck yes, girlfriend, we're on Team Equestrian Movement. Let us know if this is what you're about and this is what you're here for, and if you're like trying to establish this but you're just getting, maybe in a muddle and things aren't working out for you, or maybe they're going really well. We love hearing when things are going really well and celebrating with you. So yeah, we love hearing from you and what you're up to. So just let us know, and we will see you again next week with the Training Thursday Live, and then the Stronger Bond workshop is going to be Monday the 12th. Sarah's on Equestrian Movement, yay! You'd want to be Sarah. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.